All right, so we can get started. I actually lost my previous model for some reason. I've been backing up my other computer at home and somehow actually lost my entire model that I've been working on this entire semester. However, let's face it, I do this every semester. So here's one from last year, right? Essentially, the exact same project. But I found a site real quick because it didn't have a topography and, just faking it till I make it. But specifically today, I wanted to also show that we can make perspectives. Now, the last time that we talked about this was in exercise 3, part 1, 2, and 3. So, kind of a recap of setting up the camera, just because it's important, right? Obviously, just typing in camera, we can of course get that view. And when we type in camera of that view and we type in show, it's actually going to show us that particular view. As you guys know, in my case, I've already set up a couple of presets to get the camera going, but again, if you need a refresher, just wanted to express that we can control the camera a lot, right? But be mindful because of course that saves to the perspective that you're using. If you need to save a new one, of course you can go to set view and name view. So just again, kind of a recap there. But I went ahead and rendered this out, and I also wanted to show that Illustrator is a little bit more powerful. I've been kind of babying you a little bit, right? At least showing you different ways to, of course, put an image in Illustrator. But to be honest, you can actually line up the photo here, and it is a little bit easier, right? And we could also set up the page. So for instance, right here, here's my 11 by 17, and I think that's actually a little bit off. So I'm going to do an offset. I don't know, something like that. But essentially this being my paper, I don't know, something seems kind of off about that. Anyway, it should be mathematically correct, but we will find out. I don't know, that looks like an 11 by 17. Ah, okay, so offset doesn't always work. So let's take actually a copy of that. Copy in place, boom. And I just kind of want to offset barrier, right? I'm gonna leave this as white space and hopefully it'll make sense. I'm going to put the sky right here. That way I don't have to really do the sky to the whole thing, and I don't have to do the ground to the whole thing. But just like we've been talking about, and essentially setting up our final image. I definitely want to do a lot of that work and the drawing work. Definitely not in Illustrator and definitely not in Photoshop. So obviously just refining my drawings, and if I need to ungroup some things, that's fine too. Right? But don't need all of these lines. Oh, but don't want to get rid of them either. So ungroup, explode if you have to, and of course get rid of what you don't need. But as I was expressing also, we can break lines. I don't know if I've ever actually shown you guys that. So you can break lines between 2 points. So you can be like, from here to there, I want absolutely no line. And as you can see, it pretty much just gets rid of that line. So again, boop and boop. Again, just kind of a really easy way to trim something, especially if you don't just like always have access to trim. I guess I should have gone through those, and I guess I could go back, get another line going, hold shift, and basically trim that out. So TRIM, and basically get rid of it in the column section. But as you can see, that's going to take me a little while. But again, just to kind of show you how much setup is usually required for each and every drawing. Now from here, that's actually kind of cool. I like the way it's kind of popping out of the sky. It kind of reveals how tall this drawing is maybe. But again, I kind of want to center it on the paper. So again, I want to do all of that here just because it's a lot more tangible. It's a lot easier. In our case, I want to set up my picture. So I did actually render a picture in the background towards the beginning of class, just kind of a test render. And again, we want to basically line that up, and we won't actually use this image today, but we'll use it for what it's doing best, is actually calculating the shadow for us. And as you can see, it definitely gets some of the shadow. I guess I should have turned off maybe some of the settings, but at least for today's exercise, it can definitely work. But again, we want to line up that photo just right, and it may take a little bit of scaling. So of course, scale. As you guys know, we can take 1 point, make it correct. So for instance, I kind of picked the one that just seems most obvious. So that's actually looking pretty correct, at least pretty close. Take the scale and use my reference point. So I can take one piece, take this other piece. I like to hold shift because this scale works definitely best when it's congruent. But as you can see, we can line that up pretty darn well. Well, a little bit better. But of course, we want to get those exact views. In my case, fake it till we make it. Get pretty dang close. As you guys know and remember from exercise 3, we definitely have to go a little back and forth until we match them up just right. However, if it's not working, right, and you just notice it's not lining up too well, as you can see in mine, it might be best to either re-render it or re-two-dimensional the lines. Right? I could have something slightly off, and it's just not lining up, and I can tell actually pretty right away that it's definitely having an issue. Something seems a little off. Right? I could squish it a little bit, but I don't recommend it. But if you're advanced, you know, and you're in the middle of a live tutorial, then you can kind of go for it. But again, we'll just kind of use this as a layer. And I'll fake it till I make it. As you can see, something's definitely off about the angle. So, a couple things I could double check. I could read 2D my lines, or just kind of use this as a placeholder and actually draw that in myself. So for instance, I can lock these still. But I do want to line those up, so let's troubleshoot just a little bit. Unlock, delete. Ah man, I really like those lines that are going on. It's kind of missing some lines, I notice, so I definitely want to draw those back in, if I have to. And fake it till I make it. But in my case, let's make sure we're getting that exact view. This is also where I can go over a little bit more settings with the render. I'll switch it actually to like a fast quality real quick. That way it won't take too long for the tutorial. But keep in mind, we can actually control a lot when it comes to the studio light, the sunlight. Actually, something that I've noticed where the shadows come out a little bit better is tuning down the intensity to something like 30%. It looks super dark in the preview, but however, when we render it, it's just a little bit stronger of shadows, definitely not too bad, and definitely a little bit better of what I actually wanted. So that's looking pretty good. We'll let it render out for a second, not too slow. Hit 500 frames just like that. And we'll replace that image. Again, but I want to make 2D this again essentially. So I need to basically grab my whole model. Probably turn off my camera for this one. And take the whole piece, right? I personally like to double click on that view just in case I accidentally did something like that. So again, locking in that view, make 2D, and enter. Make sure it's on perspective 1. Looks pretty good. Group output, sounds sweet. And again, just gonna try that alignment again. No use like sitting there for 3 hours trying to make something align that's just not gonna align. So I'll just take what I've already got, right, because why not? Right, work smarter, not harder. Looks like I might need to do that piece again, so that's okay. We'll copy that one in place and basically just scale that down. Basically kind of using the same ratio and allowing for some of that to pop out. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. Sweet. Kind of align that to the page again. Not too shabby. And we'll scale that down. Sweet. Pretty much the same things. Trimming that out, but I do want to make sure that it aligns first, so I'll type in picture, test render, of course take that shot. Looking a little bit better. Yeah, something about the angle just kind of seemed off about that one. And that's okay, totally happens. Well, definitely better alignment. The angle still seems a little off, but scale it back. And again, as you guys know, this is probably a little bit easier in Rhino than it is Illustrator. Again, holding Shift. and doing your best to essentially match those up. Gosh, still a little big. Still a little big. Okay. It can be deceiving. Now a little small. Dang, just right. But definitely better than the first one. I don't know, something just seems pretty off. Well, it gets some parts, but then the other parts are pretty off. And I definitely don't want to do something like that. It's going to stretch it out too hard. It could be actually the rendering viewport that I'm using, and it's just not aligning, but dang, that's pretty off. What's going on today? It was lining up while I was practicing. See if we can fake it a little bit. No. Seems to line up here, but not there. Interesting. Whoa. Like a very different angle. Okay, never mind. It really does line up. Okay. Okay, just a little deceiving. Alright, not too shabby. I don't know, I can't live with that. Squish that a bit. And better. Definitely better. I'm okay with it. Alright. But again, so we'll take this piece, and as I mentioned, I've been kind of robbing you of a certain layer that we can do. So essentially another thing that we can do to get this into Illustrator, and of course change our line weights and even get it better into Rhino. Basically we just did all those steps essentially all in Rhino first, or sorry, to Photoshop. We did all of those settings first in Rhino. So from here we'll go to File, Export Selected, and instead of an AI file we'll actually pick a PDF file. I know it sounds kind of weird, and you'll notice in the export there is no PDF, so it's kind of weird. We have to print it. So we'll do Command P for print. We'll change this to an 11 by 17. After all, we want this to essentially line up with that piece. So a tabloid, or 11 by 17. And in my case, I'll change the window. And of course, go to my perspective. So in my case, oh, actually I want to go to the top view. My bad. We'll set that window to, of course, our 11 by 17. And we'll hit enter on that one. Doesn't look like it changed it. Man, what is going on today? I do want a higher resolution on this, so I will go with 450. There we go. Not sure why it wasn't updating the preview, but I am screen recording and sometimes it does do that stuff. But that's looking pretty good, so we'll go ahead and print it. And you'll notice that there's a Rhino PDF. We'll definitely pick that, and of course change our window. We'll keep it at basically 1 inch equals whatever, because, well, a perspective isn't technically scaled. So we'll go ahead and print that out, and we'll call it test render, or perspective. We'll go ahead and put it somewhere nice. And that's good for there. Then from here we can actually open up also a PDF file in Illustrator. So we'll grab Illustrator, File, Open, and we can actually open up that PDF. It'll have all of our vector lines and it'll have our image. Super awesome. And voila, just like that, we have the alignment, we have the image, and we still have, hopefully, our layers. Oh man, too good to be true. Obviously, there is a way to actually open up a PDF and maintain layers, but you do have to hold something actually on the keyboard to let that come in. Not really a big deal for today. In my case, I mean, I guess I could just further align that. Um, give me a second. So honestly, we could just hide this photo real quick and essentially save this as an AI file. That way we can maintain our layers. I guess I should trim that first, but for the sake of tutorial, we'll leave it as it is. I'll go ahead and save that as a AI file, just so I can get the lines. And I can figure, obviously, that hotkey maybe a little bit later. Well, can't remember it on the spot right now, so we'll go to Documents, go back, and save that as my lines. Sweet. We'll snapshot the current view, and of course put that on top. In my case, I guess all I need is this image file, but it has put it all together. Dang. I stand corrected. So we'll have to do it the old-fashioned way, and that's okay. We'll get the lines, and I already have the image, so not a big deal there. But let's go ahead and open up that AI file. Could have swore I saved it there. Perhaps I did not. Didn't I just call it lines? Oh, okay, there it is. Sweet. So again, we'll just take this one and align that accordingly. Nice. We'll take our picture, so File, Place, and we'll align that image. So, test render, good deal. And we'll minimize that for a second. A little bit bigger for the screen recording. Sweet. I'll go ahead and actually put this one on the bottom. That way we can see our lines and make that alignment a little bit easier. However, it is Illustrator, so we do have to basically just do it by hand. And that's okay. Practice makes perfect. And nailed it. Dang. All right, maybe I'm just better at Illustrator. Not sure. Anyway, works out. In my case, I do want to make sure this is 11 by 17, especially before I take it into Photoshop. But essentially, just like every other, layer that we do, we essentially want to turn these into what they need to be. Not orange, preferably. As you guys know. Taking each one, and basically I'm just grayscaling it for today. Going as fast as possible. Obviously didn't want this part to take so long, but that's what happens when you do stuff live. But again, technically, quote unquote, this would be the line weight part. Establish the line weights. And as you can see, just going straight through it. Feels like studio. Sweet. Definitely looking a little bit better. It's got some line weight. It's got some of the shade and shadow quality. Awesome. Definitely ready to take into Photoshop after we get the right size. So let's make sure we do that first. File, Document Setup, and make sure that it's 11 by 17. It is. So we're good. Good deal. From here, just like we did last time, we'll take the entire piece and we'll drag it into Photoshop. So in my case, I want to start with 11 by 17. In my case, 11 by 17. We'll go with the 350 resolution, and sweet. In my case, quite literally, I'll take the entire thing and basically drag it in. So that requires sometimes 2 screens would be nice, but it can be done. Sweet. Please don't freeze. Never click, especially if you got a Mac and you see the spinning wheel. Just don't click. It's very tempting, but we're good over here, so. Sweet. We got that. We got our line weight. We got our character. However, keep in mind it is all one piece. So a couple things that we need to do before we start, making this incredible night shot. We probably don't want a night shot. So in my case, first things first, I want to get rid of maybe that black background, or maybe even start to lighten it. And again, just kind of using this as that template. If you remember from part 1 and part 2 of exercise 6, we just use this as, as a filler, right, if you will, right, just so that we can actually coloring book it. In our case, though, let's get started. Maybe the first thing that I actually do want to attempt is the background, the sky. So, oh, I forgot to do my cool background sky. Maybe the line is still there. Let's see. I could still do it, but it was kind of nice having, the actual piece. That's okay. So we'll take that entire whole, and in my case, I kind of want to try some things out first. See if I can remove that black actually pretty easily. So in my case, a couple things we can do is the blending options. So I'm going to try multiply, and actually just getting rid of black, and that's pretty simple. And as you can see, I can get rid of a lot, but I just need to get rid of black, and specifically that black background. So again, multiply on blending options, so you can double click on pretty much any layer, set it to multiply, and of course in my case I can either take away the white or take away the black. In my case I think I'm going to kind of do both, because again this is just a placeholder for color, or sorry, a placeholder for shadow. So I'm just going to keep my shadowy elements, right? It's just, again, a layer that I kind of want to use and fill in order to make a little bit better of a drawing. And it's starting to look a lot more like a coloring book. So that's looking pretty sweet. First things first, I like to call out the layers that I need to do. So like a sky layer, let's do a ground layer. Let's do, I don't know, concrete. Maybe let's get some concrete elements in there, maybe this retaining wall, and maybe a tree layer. We were messing around with that a little bit in section, obviously a little bit easier in section, but really the exact same task. So let's start with the sky. As you guys know, last time we kind of just brushed in a sky. I'm going to go with maybe one of those photorealistic skies today. So we'll go to our Google Images. And we'll type in sky texture. Now this one actually is a perspective, so if you did want to do something that has a little bit more of a vanishing point, that would be highly acceptable, and that's actually looking pretty cool. So let's go with that one. However, it's also pretty big, so that's good too. Open image in a new tab, and always save that image or just drag it in. If it's not a JPEG though, sometimes it doesn't drag in. That's okay. Save image as. Put it on the desktop for now. We'll call it Sky 2. We'll go ahead and place it. So File, Place, somewhere. Place Embedded, and of course use that piece. Nice. Of course I kind of want that to be in the background. And as you can see, we got a lot to remove, but that's okay. In my case, I'm kind of going for, something a little bit realistic. But I do want to basically cause that angle a little bit more. And I want more of that perspectiveness. So I'm going to kind of squish it a little bit. Kind of line it up with the drawing. I did want to do kind of that little pop out of the sky. So I'm going to keep that going. Not too shabby. Now the fun part, I do need to basically remove this guy from this piece. So I can just trace it. And of course this is where the tedious work comes in. And if you have the Wacom, way easier to actually do this. Should have set up the Wacom today, but it is what it is. But this is basically where I want to trace my lines. Keep in mind it's like a coloring book. So for the sake of tutorial, I at least want to show a little bit where it's perfect and just kind of fake it till I make it. Obviously in my case, I'm just removing the sky, so anything where I don't want to see the sky. Now obviously I want to keep the sky through the handrails and things like that, and I definitely want to use a better render. This one's pretty choppy. But as you can see, just gonna go blow through it for the sake of tutorial and speed. But I essentially want to keep all this part for the sky and get the inverse. Don't need the sky in the ground, so we'll fake it till we make it there. We'll essentially keep the sky up here, and of course keep the sky up here. And again, just go around the architecture. Fake it till I make it. I guess you could try to use the magic wand tool, but if you don't have a high resolution render, it's not going to come out so well. Or at least it's going to have a hard time finding the tolerance of some of those pieces. And again, obviously trace it a lot better than I'm tracing it today, but not too shabby for what we're doing. Sweet. So now that we have that piece, let's get rid of the part we don't need. So I'll go to Sky, Eraser tool. It's going to be like, hey, you got to make this a smart object first. That's totally fine. And in my case, I got the wrong piece. That's okay. Go back to Selection tool, right click, and select the inverse. Sweet. Back to Erase, and of course get rid of the part that I don't need. In my case, what's kind of nice about setting up that boundary is you can kind of go ham on it, and you don't feel like you're actually messing up your drawing. Now, of course, this is why you want to trace it really well. Otherwise, you'll erase something that you need, like I'm going to do today. For instance, that sky in between the object itself. But as you can see, it's really starting to come together. Now, you could just make this a lot bigger and go a little bit faster. Man, already right there, just looking pretty sweet, right? Now, we do the same things that we do in section. So, taking our sky, just like we did last time. I don't need to take the selection of the sky, so I'm going to deselect by Command D. I'm going to use that sky, blur it out a little bit. I want to force my architecture to be in the field of view. So in my case, I'm going to go with Filter. I'm going to use a little bit of a blur and a Gaussian blur. Maybe not that much. Again, probably somewhere just in a slight blurry area. And that's pretty nice, right? Obviously the sky is starting to fall back a little bit. And we can start to add trees and entourage and maybe the mountains and mountainscape if that's the case. But you already know how to do that from part 2. So I want to show some stuff that maybe we don't know yet. In our case, we want to materialize this, and maybe I didn't quite find the right settings or the material, or didn't get to it actually in Rhino. Don't get me wrong, we could just get the materials too and just use the materials. But sometimes you use stone, right? And stone is so ambiguous that it's actually easier to do, I think, in Photoshop because you can be specific. Whereas like certain materials, they just don't tile well. You start to get kind of the Minecraft look where it looks like the same tile over and over. And that's definitely true of Rhino, and just a little bit more advanced and stuff that you have to do to avoid that in rendering in Rhino. So I don't know, it's still a basic class. I'm not trying to do the most advanced stuff. So in our case, there is a simpler way, and that's just kind of doing it the old-fashioned way. And I say old-fashioned because early 2000s, this is kind of the way that we had to do it in Photoshop. So in our case, I'd want to find that concrete texture. So maybe concrete, board form, again, something that starts to maybe have these kind of shapes to them. And that's actually looking pretty sweet. Now, I do want to find something that's pretty flat and has no shade and shadow. After all, we already have the shade and shadow quality. So we're going to use that, right, instead of trying to find it constantly on the internet. So I want to make this box right here maybe some concrete, and maybe this box some concrete, and maybe make that some wood. So let's go ahead and do that today. Let's get rid of Illustrator for now. Don't need that anymore. Don't save. And don't save. Sweet. So that's looking pretty nice. Let's go ahead and get some brick material, or sorry, some concrete. Bless you. Concrete walls. Anytime we can be specific, guys, that is definitely the go-to. So let's make that into a wall. All right, that one's actually looking pretty sweet. Let's see how big it is. It's decent. We're gonna have to do some tile work to it. That's actually a little bit better. It has a little bit more to it, and it's a heck of a lot bigger. So let's go ahead and use that one. So open image in new tab. There's actually this website also that's called, I believe, Architectures. Let me go ahead. Yeah, super awesome library actually. So Architectures actually has all of these textures flat for us, and you know, a multitude of them. However, eventually you do have to kind of pay for these. I think it's like $5 a month, but or $5 indefinitely. I'm not sure. I don't pay for it. Yeah, there's a pro version, and they seem to, you know, change these things. But again, definitely helpful if you're in studio and you just need like a really good texture. You can definitely download some. And it comes with all the related textures. Really nice. But again, for the sake of the tutorial today, this is about all I need. So again, I'm going to take that piece and of course use it. However, I'm just going to drag that one right on there. So file, and we can place it too. Might as well. Place embedded. Of course, that board form concrete. Sweet. Dang, it's pretty big. So obviously I want to size that down, and really the special tools that we can use today, guys, is, well, we have to follow both the scale. So it is actually pretty small, right? It's getting far back there. But we also want to maintain the angle, right? So for instance, I want to get that maybe lined up, but it's of course not going to actually stay flat like this. It will at this angle, I suppose. But we can also hold Option and do a couple of different things. So for instance, on Command, I can actually change that angle a little bit. So I'd want to maintain essentially my perspective angle. And I'm going to have to tile this one a little bit myself. So I'm going to take a copy of that, copy, paste, and essentially do the same thing. Now obviously I want to use my move tool and fake it till I make it. Now as you can see, I need to hold Command or Control on Windows. I can really start to shape this guy. Maybe a little bit bigger. Right, I do want a little bit of arbitrariness, and I can even overlap them. Not too shabby. Again, I'll take a copy, paste, take that same piece, and finish in the rest. Now, I don't want to scale it too much because, well, then some looks a little thicker and some looks a little fatter. So again, piece by piece. I want to kind of align that up, and of course paste it again, and further refine it. So as you can see, again, I can take that Command or Control key and basically align those. Not too shabby. Starting to look at least somewhat like a board form concrete. It is looking a little tiled though. So another thing that I can do, of course, to avoid that, is to flip it. So in Control T or the transformation tool, you can right click on something and of course flip it horizontally. Now it's going the wrong angle now, but that's okay because we can change it. And again, maintaining that angle. And if you notice, it kind of gets away from that tiling effect, right? We'll hit enter and get that, right? I could also flip this one as well. Again, if I wanted to make a more coherent scene. So flip horizontally, sweet. And again, holding Control and dialing that in. Right, trying to make it as arbitrary as possible because, well, in real life, let's face it, the material doesn't look like Minecraft. Sweet. Definitely looking a lot better, right? It's still a little bit tiley, but you know, it is starting to have some of that variation. That's pretty nice. Another way that we can change that, so let's say I was kind of done with that face. I'll take all these pieces and essentially merge those layers together. That way I essentially all have one piece. And I can still add kind of some burn marks to it. That's essentially what I like to do. So there's this little tool called smudge and burn. Basically sponge takes out color, which is really nice when you just need to desaturate small bits. the burn tool, which kind of adds this vignette kind of feel to it, and of course the dodge tool, which kind of just makes it like goo. You can definitely test these out, but the burn tool is definitely one that I like to use. It just kind of adds some variation to it, right, if you notice. And again, I kind of like to add a burn mark, something that starts to make it a little bit more varying. Now, you don't want to do it too much, right, because then it starts, look like a cheetah. But, nothing wrong with that, right? Adding a little bit of variation to that. Keep in mind, we're eventually going to dial this back anyway, and actually use the shade and shadow. Oop, too much. We'll use the shade and shadow of that object itself. So I'm going to dial it back, right? That way I can actually get some of that shade and shadow. It'll also become a little bit more apparent on this piece. So again, I don't really want to do that necessarily all over again. So I'll just make a copy and duplicate. Sorry, I was looking for the word copy. I'll take that piece, Command T. I'm going to flip it. That way I can basically have these align with each other. And again, using Control. Now, eventually you want to do this a lot faster than I can talk, but fake it till you make it, right? I gotta give some instruction. So, pretty sweet. And again, I kind of want to line up that angle. Again, I probably also want to trim some of that off too. But for the sake of tutorial, again, I just want to show you at least how to use it. What's kind of nice about duplicating it is it maintains that angle, and it also maintains the scale, which is kind of nice if you don't want to necessarily do that all over again. The only thing that does kind of sink is, well, you do kind of get this mirroring effect, so I like to slightly put it off. That way there isn't a perfect mirror, as you can see. And again, we can use our burn tool to mitigate some of that as well. But looking pretty sweet and maintaining some of that, of course, shade and shadow. Now, I do want that shade and shadow to be a little bit more apparent. So I might take both of these, either tone it down, and that's okay. I mean, it's starting to look less like concrete though, right? So I kind of want that back. So what could I do? Well, I'll take both pieces. In my case, I probably want to remove that piece first. So let's go ahead and do so. But I'm going to merge those together because, I mean, shoot, why not? In my case, I'd probably want to know my architecture a little bit better and basically take that out. So again, just erase it. Double click to maintain. We'll take that layer and of course erase. We don't need texture where there is no texture. Sweet. Let's take this and give it a little bit more contrast. So we'll take our line work essentially and just give it a lot more contrast. That way that shadow quality actually comes out. So we'll enhance the contrast and arguably maybe even turn down the brightness. Now I do have my blending settings on, so that's why it's kind of getting all funky on me. You might want to turn that off first. So we'll turn off multiply, we'll set it back to normal, and we'll take our white eyedropper tool and our black eyedropper tool, and we'll get some of that information back real quick. Ooh, dark sky. Anyway, let's go ahead and change it. So again, images, adjustments, brightness and contrast. I'm going to turn down the brightness. Again, I just want actually those shadows to pop a little bit more, and now they are, right? By of course controlling the brightness, not too much, right? There's a sweet spot for sure. And we can also tone this down as well. Oop, wrong layer. Okay, there it is. Nice. So of course we'll put that on top. And it's starting to have much more of that quality. But again, we don't necessarily have to render this out every time. And in fact, back in the day, it took too long to render something. So we'd often just do it by hand, right? Or I guess by Photoshop, right? Not necessarily by hand. But moving on, definitely got some of that texture. I do want it to pop just a little bit more. So again, changing some brightness and contrast. In my case, maybe actually darker works better and a little bit more contrast. Sweet. You can also change the vibrance. Doesn't seem to have much effect. All oversaturated though. But again, you kind of want to maintain those perspective angles. Mine's a little bit off, but I kind of like that. We'll go ahead and recall that concrete. That way we can always turn that off and or copy that layer and maybe apply it to another piece. Let's do another one. So obviously I want to take back my blending options. It's looking like a dark sky. So we'll set that back to multiply and get rid of some of the black. As you can see, I don't want to get rid of too much, otherwise it'll get rid of the shadow. So again, I do want to leave that quality of shadow. It's a sweet spot for sure. But as you can see, you're really starting to pop in terms of material, the architecture, and as you can imagine, it does take a little bit of while, which is why the perspective view is extra credit, at least for this class. But some of you need that extra credit, you know, so it is available. So the next thing, probably the hardest thing ever, is definitely three-dimensional grass. But if you find a pretty good image, let's do it. And we still got some time. But grass texture is definitely a hard one to find. And to be fair, this is where I'd probably use Twinmotions, or actually even something that I've already done in Twinmotions, such as like these images. I'd even just, you know, literally take that one because it's already at the right angle. But it's looking kind of digital, right? And it looks, you know, kind of silly. It looks like somebody put a bunch of like moss on cardboard or something. So let's do something a little bit more digital. We'll go with grass field, is usually what I do. And again, texture. Always throwing in that word texture in there. But as you can see, a little generated. We can also throw in perspective. Meh. Better. Definitely something like that is doable, but my gosh, we're not in like the lushness of Ireland. So again, you want to find something that is obviously natural. And what I mean by that is definitely not this. We don't want a worm's eye view of the grass. However, there might be some bits of that you know, are useful. Something like this is probably okay. It's pretty flat and I could probably manipulate that a lot, but what's kind of nice is I have some big and some small towards the back. We definitely want that effect of big grass in the front and the foreground, and then of course some grass that is starting to get really small towards the background. That's actually pretty good, right? It's got a little bit of fuzziness to it. It's still pretty darn lush. I wish my grass looked like that. But in our case, let's use it for today. So I'll use that image, and again, save it if it's not going to drag in. Oop, it drags in, thank goodness. And again, we're trying to be referential here. I mean, it's starting to look like Windows XP, which I don't mind either. But again, it's referential, so we're not trying to make this hyper-realistic photo drawing, right? After all, we could do just Twinmotions if we really wanted to do that. So again, we're trying to give a quality here. We're trying to give, like, in my case, maybe the lushness of Ireland. But I want to line that up first here. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're going to have to tile this a little bit. I definitely don't want like this gigantic grass, right? That looks unrealistic and starts to even make my architecture look a little out of scale, right? So something of that small is probably just right. You guys see that? It's an effect, right? It's referencing, not necessarily trying to be a Leonardo da Vinci realism. Anyway, so that's looking pretty good. And I do want to take out that background layer just because I don't need it. Again, blending options is sometimes your best friend. So multiply, look at that. Didn't even have to do any work, just set it to multiply. And of course, I can't just remove the white there, even though I kind of like that. Anyway, it's starting to look like grass is growing on my drawing. I don't know, it's, again, if I'm going for the effect, maybe that's something I go for. But for the sake of today, I just wanted to remove the background. So we'll do that. And actually just probably copy the heck out of it. So I'm going to call this one grass 1. And let's go ahead and put that at the very top, because I'm going to make definitely a few copies. So Command C, V, and again, bake it till we make it. As you can see, that actually tiles pretty darn well. And again, I'm just doing Command V, right? Maybe this last one's a little bit bigger. And again, I'm going to trim it up a little bit, so definitely definitely works there, right? Not too shabby. Although I want to make sure that I kind of get all of it, so if I had grass in the back, I'd probably, get that too. But I'll essentially take all these grass pieces, I'll hold shift, and basically merge those layers. So that's pretty sweet, and I essentially have all one grass layer. I'm gonna add a little bit of transparency. After all, I do want to kind of see my topography. Not in like a big way, but again, I want to reference the grass. I don't need photorealistic grass. And that's actually looking pretty sweet. Now it's starting to cover up some of the shadow information that I wanted. So I may need to actually pull that back. Maybe put it with my ground layer. Looks like I already got my ground layer, so I'm just going to delete that one. But again, I can go back and forth and start to realize, oh yeah, that's actually concrete. I may need to actually erase some of that. Not a big deal. So we'll go to my grass layer, polygonal lasso tool, and basically get some of that back. Obviously, just erasing it. You can erase it in a pretty nice way though, right? So for instance, I can take the grass, I can brush it out, right? Set maybe to 0 and kind of just soften it out. Now, in my case, it looks like I accidentally brushed it. Make sure you erase tool and give it a softness. Nothing wrong with that. But if I didn't want it to be too harsh, right, and just kind of give it a soft blow, that way there's still kind of a fuzziness in there. Again, there's definitely an art to doing it. But let's do one last material. So we got some grass, we got some shade and shadow quality, we got the sky going. Actually, the sky is a bit much. Let's tone that down a little bit. There we go. Yeah, that's looking good. Again, keep in mind, these are always going to print out a little bit darker anyway. So very often in Photoshop, I have to lighten things up, just so that I know that it's going to actually produce something where the architecture is still coherent. Now, I probably shouldn't have set every single line to just random gray, because it's not really popping too well, but that's okay. Let's get some, I don't know, wood siding in there. I like wood siding. Who doesn't? But our last one for today, let's do some wood siding texture or material. Sometimes I'll just put both words in there. Again, that way I can find something flat that has not a lot of shade and shadow and doesn't look too tiley, right? So even something like that is actually pretty nice because I could color it myself. I could paint and brush it in. Something like this is not good, right? Because there's kind of a highlight spot towards the left and a dark spot towards the right. Definitely don't want that. Again, I want something pretty flat. That is not flat. That is like the worst thing that you could do. That's actually pretty good, but it's got a knot going down the middle. So that's, again, something's going to tile like that. Like I said, Architectures is definitely a really good resource. I do think you have to pay for it, but it does have a lot of free ones. And kind of some wild ones. I mean, obviously definitely useful for interior designers, or if you're trying to do this for like a perspective view of a bathroom. My goodness. But this grass is just not cutting it. Mondo grass? I didn't know that was a thing. Learn something new every day. But in our case, let's get that wood siding. And actually that one's pretty okay. So we'll open up that one in a new tab. And of course, take that one. Boop. Command T to transform it. And basically maintain that angle. As you guys know, that is not the angle we need. And it's not even really the size we need. So again, holding control and getting that perspective. Now in my case, I'm gonna have to erase a lot of this and perhaps shrink it down quite a bit. Again, trying to go for the scale. Obviously I don't want too short of wood and I don't want too big of wood. So realistically, if I know this is 1 foot, I can probably get these like 2x6s. And that's probably pretty fair. Again, dialing in the angle is probably the most important part. So again, make sure you maintain that. Oops. Again, you do have to press the corner first and then hold Command if you're on Mac or Control if you're on Windows. Not too shabby. I will have to tile it though. So we'll hit Enter. And of course take that and copy it. Oop, wrong copy. Make sure you copy the right thing. In my case, Is it layer 1? Yep. So make sure you label these things. Wood siding. Copy, paste. Oops. Again, if you do that a lot, just lock your layers. It takes a little bit of finesse, especially in a perspective view. I would say a perspective view is harder. Again, this is why it's extra credit. But especially if you're trying to use this in studio, this is kind of for everybody. So not only, honestly, where my guys are right now in D4, they're doing money shots. So hopefully definitely useful for them, especially if they don't understand twin motions or anything like that. You can do it by hand. I don't know why I keep saying that, but in our case, let's get more of those. So copy, paste, and again, we'll just go down the wall. Trying to, again, maintain this angle. You'll notice that I have to change each one ever so slightly to, again, maintain that angle of the perspective. Get that one again, paste. And again, just lining up each of those. And you should, of course, see it change each time. Slowly and slowly getting closer to that perspective. Now, I definitely have a lot to erase here, but that's okay. Very often I'll actually step back and make sure that I'm maintaining that angle. And as you can see, it's actually getting a little bit flatter than I thought. There we go. But again, it takes some time. Those money shots don't make themselves. You know, we're making the ones for the, you know, the magazines. Front cover. Why not? But again, you can definitely tell when it's the wrong angle versus the wrong angle and just right. Do have to play around with it a little bit. But I kind of like it because, again, we're not trying to make something photorealistic. We're just trying to reference something. So we just want our client or even our studio professor to understand what we think we want these materials to be. I know in a world of hyper-realism that sometimes we think that we're supposed to make like the realest thing possible, but that's just not true. And it gets actually a lot of architecture firms in a lot of trouble because they'll give a photorealistic rendering to their client and actually be sued because, well, the client thought that that perfect shade of white or blue, you know, needed to be there, and next thing you know, you're being sued because, well, you didn't match the render. Well, maybe you shouldn't do a photorealistic render. Kind of sad, actually, that a client would be that petty, but you don't know some architecture clients. They can definitely be so. But in my case, faking it until I make it today. So we'll just end on this last piece. It's gonna look a little big, but that's okay. Sweet. I'll take each of those wood siding pieces and basically put them into one, because who wants 20 layers when you can just have one? So merge. And again, super nice. In my case, I do need to trim that up a little bit, so I'm gonna soften it, use my lasso tool, and trace it ever so perfectly today, as you can see. So basically removing everything that I don't need. In my case, all of this. And that's okay. Fake it till you make it. In my case, a lot to remove, right? I mean, I've really got to go around this, and for the sake of tutorial, I'm just gonna blow right through it, just so you can kind of get the idea. But obviously, I'd want to go around my other pieces, as you can see. There we go. And essentially erase. So I'll erase from that piece. Oh no, the wrong side. That's okay. Selection, right click, select inverse, and try that erase again. And now it's looking like some pretty good wood siding now. We'll bring that back a little bit. Oof, look at that. But now we got that shade and shadow quality, and we didn't have to actually do all the work in Rhino, right? So again, and what's kind of nice is I get a little bit of variation again, a little bit of Toy Story 4, something that looks too perfect. It's like Toy Story 1. It's just too perfect. It doesn't have the shakiness, right? But pretty impactful. Looks like honestly a screensaver for Windows XP. Not gonna lie, but obviously that's just kind of because of the color. But again, very quick way to do this, not only in studio, but of course also for our bonus. Just requiring one, by the way. If you want to do more, that's really up to you. But again, hopefully helpful for studio and of course computer graphics. Anybody want me to show something else or had a question about Photoshop in perspective? Fair enough. We'll leave it there for today and keep on trucking.